My name is Kanchan Gupta, and my project is called The British Royal Family's Engagement with the Press, with case studies of Diana Spencer and Meghan Markle. In recent years, there has been an increase in the popularity of the royal family. We hear about them and we see them on the news and in social media a lot more than we were before. And this is for a number of reasons. First is royal weddings. William and Kate got married in 2011, and Harry and Meghan got married in 2018. Now, while celebrity weddings are always a big deal, I think that royal weddings hold a bit more weight to them. And this is because who gets married into the family can affect royal titles and things like that. Next is Queen Elizabeth II's reign and her death. She was the longest reigning monarch, which gained a lot of media coverage, and her unfortunate death in 2022 gained a lot of media coverage all around the world. Next is an increase in social media presence and an increase in celebrity culture. The royal family has increased their behind the scenes content and social media coverage of their lives. They've also increased their participation in celebrity like activities, such as talk shows. And lastly is controversies, excuse me. Um, Prince Andrew had a lot of controversy surrounding him, mainly in 2010, and Harry and Meghan have a lot of controversy still surrounding them today, regarding them stepping back from the royal family. And I don't want to talk about this too much yet, but I will get into it shortly. Now, if a lot of these names seem familiar, but you don't totally understand the royal family or their positions, this is just an overview of the entire family. Of course, it's not every single member, but it's just the people who I think are most relevant to this project. So first is Queen Elizabeth II. She was the longest reigning monarch. She ruled from 1952 to 2022 when she unfortunately died. Next is King Charles, who just very recently became king, and he is Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip's oldest son. Next is Camilla, the Queen Consort, and his second wife. His first wife was Diana, who is William's mother. William is Diana and Charles's eldest son. He's the Prince of Wales, and he's heir to the throne. And he is married to Catherine, or Kate Middleton. They have 3 children together, and she is the Princess of Wales. Next is Harry. He's the second son of Charles and Diana. He's the former Duke of Sussex, and he is 5th in line for the throne, and he is married to Meghan Markle. She is the previous Duchess of Sussex, and they have 2 children together. So now we're going to get into 2 of the biggest controversial situations the royal family has ever faced, Diana Spencer and Meghan Markle. And we're going to start off with Diana. So Diana was born in 1961, and she was part of British nobility before she was married to Charles. Hundreds of millions of people watched her wedding with Charles in 1981. It was very publicized, and she was an extremely beloved figure of her time. This was because she was a symbol of grace, beauty, elegance, and kindness. She was also well known for her charitable work, most notably with AIDS. But despite all of this, the couple did have marital problems. Diana struggled significantly with her mental health. They were also facing severe pressure from the press and the public in general, and they were both unfaithful to each other. This caused them to split in 1992, and their divorce became final in 1996. Diana died in 1997 in a car crash in Paris. And this is still a very controversial topic today because many people believe that she was murdered or that the royal family had some sort of involvement in her death. And she was actually in Paris at the time with her then boyfriend, Dodi Fayad, who did die in the car crash with her. Diana had a very interesting relationship with the press. They loved her because she was dedicated to charitable causes. She was charmful, she was graceful, her fashion sense was considered, iconic, and just her demeanor overall. And so some of her more positive nicknames include the Queen of Hearts, the People's Princess, the Fairy Tale Princess, and the People's Champion. However, she did face intense scrutiny that did contribute to her mental health issues. And so the press was brutal to Diana, and called her a lot of derogatory names, such as the Duchess of Pork, which was a name given to her when she gained some weight, or Shy Di, regarding her shyness and decreased engagement with the media. And so this was kind of interesting because when she first joined the family, she was adored by the press. And then once her marital problems became more well known and their divorce became final, the press kind of turned on her. And her divorce with Charles was a very, very publicized matter. People were dissecting her problems with Charles, and it was a very, very big affair. And so after the divorce, the press continued to follow her and her children around relentlessly. And she was very outspoken about how she felt mistreated by them. In fact, when she was in Paris before her death, she expressed that she was scared for her life due to the constant pressure and the constant following of the press. And this is why people blame them for her death, because that night when she was in the car, she was actually trying to avoid paparazzi and photographers that had swarmed her hotel. And according to witnesses, the press even interfered and delayed the involvement of emergency medical personnel, which was very significant considering that Diana and the other people in the car were critically injured. And so her involvement with the press is probably the most controversial of everyone associated with the royal family, because while they did love her, they did not hesitate to call her names, criticize her, or belittle her. And while they didn't exactly pull the trigger, they did play a pretty big role in her death. And so now we're going to move on to Meghan Markle. Prior to her marriage, she had a very established acting career before meeting Harry. She was a very popular actress on a show called Suits. Um, she was also very big on charity work. She was very involved in a large variety of charity work, which did continue once she became part of the royal family and is still something that she's involved in today. But she did receive a lot of criticism and hate from news outlets and just the general public because she is a biracial woman. And so, the articles, both here and there in England, did kind of highlight this in a very negative way. Um, and this was very concerning for people because of what it meant for Harry and Meghan's children. They were very concerned what it meant for a royal child to have mixed blood. And people even edited a photo of a chimpanzee leaving the hospital, and they titled it Royal Baby as another way to kind of insult and mock their relationship. There was also a ton of controversy surrounding her when she was still part of the family because of her actions, because people felt that she wasn't respecting or following British protocols. For example, the first time she met the Queen, she did not understand that she was supposed to curtsy because she felt that she was just meeting Harry's grandmother, but Harry had to explain to her that no, she's actually, while it is my grandmother, this is also the Queen. And so when they told this story in an interview, they meant it in a more lighthearted sense, but people kind of turned on her because they felt that it was very disrespectful to the Queen and her title. And so they also criticized her for breaking royal protocol or being too modern in her approach to her royal duties, which kind of bleeds into why they left the royal family. In 2020, Harry and Meghan released a statement saying that they wanted to carve out a new progressive role within the royal family. And while some believe that the family was blindsided by this decision and that the first time they were hearing about it was through this statement, both Harry and Meghan have denied that and have stated that the family was well aware of it before this decision had been made. And so their initial step back caused a lot of controversy because some saw it as noble for them to prioritize their beliefs and their mental health, while others looked down on them for abandoning their duties. And while Harry did struggle with press and media and their criticism, Meghan really took the majority of it because people felt that as an American, she was stealing Harry away from his family and from his duties. And so now I will move on to comparing and contrasting. So when you first see their situations, a lot more differences kind of jump out at first. And so, Meghan was married into the royal family, whereas Diana was a part of it and had connections to it from a young age, whereas Meghan was also American and Diana was already part of British nobility. Meghan really became the attention of the press once she started dating Harry, whereas Diana had been dealing with this since she was born. And Meghan kind of lives in a world where the press is dominated by social media and online news outlets, whereas Diana lived in an age where the press was dominated by newspapers and magazines. And so they actually do have a lot more similarities than I initially realized. So they were both subjected to intense scrutiny and criticism. They were both targets of sexist abuse in which their appearances were criticized, like such as the things they wore, the way that they styled their hair, their makeup, things like that. They both suffered attacks on not only their own family relationships, but their relationships with royal family members. Their mental health both suffered due to the press. They were both very vocal about their experiences, not only with mental health, but with their struggles with the press. And they both even took legal action against the press. And so what was kind of interesting to see is that the things that remained the same between their situations, despite being decades apart, are all very negative things. And so it kind of brought my attention to bigger issues that, despite a lot of the reforms that we've made socially, and within just the media specifically, to, women are still being criticized in similar ways. And another thing that was similar is that both Meghan and Diana had asked the royal family for mental health help, and they were both denied that. And so it also brought my attention to what I consider a very big issue within the royal family, the fact that, when Meghan had asked for mental help, um, you know, this is something that they had already gone through with Diana, and yet they still had denied her that help. And so that was another thing that, is a very large issue that I think needs to be addressed. So another thing I wanted to look at was William and Kate's relationship with the press versus Harry and Meghan. And so William and Kate have a much more cordial relationship with the press. They have frequently participated in photo opportunities and interviews and things like that. And they have also taken legal action when they think it's necessary. But overall, it's much more traditional. Whereas Harry and Meghan have a much more fraught and contentious relationship with the press, and they are much more vocal about their struggles with the press. And so when it comes to, they have also taken legal action, but they're much more aggressive and confrontational about it. Yet at the same time, despite all the negativity, Harry and Meghan are currently really leaning into the media and press attention. And so, in efforts to kind of take control of the narrative, they have done documentaries, interviews, a Netflix documentary, and then interviews with Oprah, CNN, Anderson Cooper. They've done a variety of them. Um, and most recently, Harry released his memoir titled Spare. And so I actually found his book very interesting to read. And this was because he gave his personal opinion and narrative about his entire life. And so you kind of get to see his perspective on events that we know that happened from a more public point of view. And now you get to hear his kind of own thoughts and what he was experiencing behind the scenes. And he also talked a lot about his hatred for the press. Which I thought was really interesting. It started with his mother's death. He blamed them for his mother's death, and it kind of continues on throughout his entire life. And so it's interesting to see how his hatred developed over time, not only with first his mother, then himself, but then how it continues to affect him in his current life right now and his relationship with Meghan. He also does talk about his relationship with Meghan and how that developed and the problems that they faced as it became more and more serious. And then lastly, throughout the entire book, he talks about the royal family and he shows a side to them and their dynamics that haven't really been seen or discussed before. And so overall, I really enjoyed doing this project. I think the biggest kind of real world application I took from this was the fact that, our press and our media definitely need to be reformed. I think that the press likes to really focus on negativity and controversy. We live in an age where clickbaiting is a very big thing. And so, they try and blow things out of proportion and they try to make situations a much bigger deal than they actually are, just in hopes that people will click on the article more. And I think that this is how misinformation spreads. And misinformation right now is a very, very big issue in all topics, social issues, scientific issues, anything. Misinformation is kind of increasing. And this is very problematic because, it's very, very dangerous to have incorrect information out there. And so I think that this project was really a great way that for me to see bigger issues that we have in our media and press and kind of potentially start to think about, what type of reform I would want to see. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about my project.